December 17, 1944, near Stavelot, Belgium. Snowfall whispers across the Ardennes forest. The pines bend under the white weight of winter as Panzer engines growl in the distance. It is the second day of Hitler's desperate counteroffensive, Operation Wacht am Rhein, the Battle of the Bulge. A column of German armored vehicles crawls through the fog, Tiger eyes of Kampfgruppe Peiper, led by the ruthless SS Standartenführer Joachim Peiper, the youngest regimental commander in the Waffen-SS. His tanks are running low on fuel. The men know it. Every mile deeper into Belgium is a gamble. Peiper's objective is simple on paper: reach the Meuse River, break through the Allied lines, and seize Antwerp. But to do that, he needs something the Reich no longer has: gasoline. The engines sputter as they approach a small Belgian village. Flames flicker behind the fog, an abandoned American fuel depot. The smell hits first, that sharp sweet tang of high-octane gasoline. Mein Gott! One of the SS men mutters, his eyes widening as they approach the depot. Stacked under snow-covered tarps, the barrels stretch for rows to 50,000 gallons of Allied fuel, enough to keep Peiper's column rolling for days. Peiper steps down from his King Tiger, the frozen ground crunching under his boots. He lifts a gloved hand to wipe the frost from a fuel drum, the stenciled letters shining beneath the grime. USARMY80. Octane gasoline. Wir haben es geschafft, he breathes. We've done it. The men cheer. After 2 days of relentless advance, the prize they've been praying for is finally here. They move fast. Mechanics unseal barrels, fueling trucks roll forward, hoses connect, pumps hum to life. The men laugh, shouting to one another over the roar of idling engines. But then the sound changes. Engines cough, choke, die. At first they think it's the cold. A few curses, a few slaps to the side of a Sherman they'd captured earlier. But when they pour the same fuel into a Panther tank, the engine sputters and quits. Verdammt nochmal, was this loss? Damn it, what's happening? The chief mechanic, his face pale with frost and disbelief, dips a finger into the fuel and sniffs. American gasoline, Herr Obersturmbannführer, he says quietly. It's too low grade for our engines. The octane's wrong. Peiper stares at him, expression frozen like the landscape. He understands immediately. The Maybach HL230 engines inside his Panzers require high-grade 95-octane synthetic fuel, a luxury the Reich can no longer produce. The American 80-octane is useless. It will stall or destroy their engines. The 50,000 gallons glisten in the snow, a cruel mirage. Peiper's men fall silent. The laughter dies. Only the wind remains, carrying the hollow sound of their failure. He turns away from the barrels, jaw tightening beneath his scarf. Dump it, he orders. We can't use it. Some of the younger SS soldiers look shocked. Herr Standartenführer, we can't just dump it. Peiper roars. Metal lids clang open. Streams of precious fuel spill into the snow, hissing like dying snakes. The liquid forms dark rivers across the white ground, the blood of a dying war machine. Peiper looks out toward the west, toward the Meuse River, toward Antwerp, still 70 miles away. He knows what this means. They won't make it. Not without fuel. Behind him, the barrels sit like tombstones. Each one a reminder of a truth no one dares speak aloud. Germany is running on empty. In Berlin, Göring still boasts of victory. Propaganda posters promise the Allies will be driven into the sea. But here, in the frozen Ardennes, Peiper's men stare at the leaking gasoline and see the truth. The Reich is bleeding to death, drop by drop. Peiper clenches his fists. We move, he says coldly. We'll find another depot, one with the right fuel. The engines groan as the column rolls on, leaving behind the spoils they can't use. The smell of wasted gasoline lingers long after they disappear into the forest. For the men of Kampfgruppe Peiper, the irony cuts deep. They had finally seized the lifeblood of war and found it poisoned. As night falls over the Ardennes, the flicker of Allied flares begins to glow over the horizon. Somewhere out there, thousands of American trucks rumble forward, their tanks full, their supply lines endless. For the Germans, the road ahead grows darker by the mile. December 18, 1944, La Gleize, Belgium. The morning fog hangs low over the valley as Kampfgruppe Peiper pushes west. Tracks crunch through ice, the steel beasts groaning with each hill. The tanks advance, but slower now, more cautious. Fuel gauges dance dangerously close to zero. Piper rides inside his Tiger II, eyes flicking over the map spread on his lap. The bold red arrows of Hitler's offensive, meant to spear deep into Allied lines, already feel like a fantasy. Over the radio, a report crackles through. Panther 232 out of fuel. King Tiger 204 down, truck column halted near Trois Ponts. Piper slams a fist against the turret wall. The sound rings metallic, hollow. Verdammt, he mutters. We're choking on fumes. His adjutant, Obersturmführer Werner Sternbeck, looks up. If we could just reach the Meuse, Herr Standartenführer. Piper cuts him off. The Meuse is 70 kilometers away. Without fuel, we won't reach 70 meters. Outside, soldiers march on foot beside the tanks, their breath forming white ghosts in the cold air. Every few hundred meters, another vehicle sputters, hisses, and stops. Crews abandon them by the roadside, dark hulks against the snow. To the west, the low thunder of artillery echoes. The Americans are regrouping. At a crossroads, Piper halts his column. The men gather around a captured map spread across the hood of a truck. One finger points toward Stavelot, another toward Trois Ponts. There's an American supply convoy rumored near the river, a sergeant reports. Fuel trucks. Piper's eyes flash. Then we'll take them. The order goes out. The column turns, engines whining, toward the sound of distant gunfire. They reach the edge of Stavelot by midday, smoke rising from the town. The Americans are there. Sherman tanks dug in, jeeps darting through narrow streets, machine guns barking from the church steeple. Piper's men attack like wolves, mortar rain down. Panthers roll forward, their cannons spitting fire. Houses collapse in showers of brick and flame. The smell of gunpowder and burning pine fills the air. By dusk, the Americans withdraw. The streets are littered with debris and wrecked fuel trucks. Piper climbs down from his tank, boots crunching over shattered glass. The trucks are burning, black smoke curling into the snow-laden sky. The few that remain intact bear the familiar markings. U.S. Army FUEL 80 octane. He doesn't need to test it this time. He knows. The victory feels empty. His men have taken the town, but they can't move beyond it. They've killed for gasoline they can't burn. As they camp among the ruins, Piper sits by the fire, helmet on his knee, staring into the flames. The faces around him are silent, eyes sunken with exhaustion. One of his lieutenants breaks the silence. Herr Standartenführer? Maybe Berlin will send more fuel. Piper almost laughs, a short, bitter sound. Berlin? He says, Berlin has no fuel left to send. It's the truth every officer in the Wehrmacht already knows, but few dare to speak aloud. By late 1944, Germany's synthetic fuel plants at Luna, Böhlen, and Plitz had been shattered by Allied bombing. What little production remained was rationed for the Luftwaffe, for fighter planes that rarely had enough to fly. The armored divisions at the front were living off fumes, scavenging, stealing, praying for captured supplies. Even Hitler's elite SS Panzer units were told to capture Allied fuel depots or die trying. That was the real reason behind the Ardennes offensive, not just to split the Allies, but to steal their lifeblood. Now, standing among the barrels of useless gasoline, Piper realizes the irony. They've captured victory itself, and it's frozen solid. By midnight, Piper receives new orders. Hold the line, conserve fuel, wait for reinforcements. But the reinforcements never come. The radios go silent. The snow falls harder. Somewhere to the east, the sound of distant explosions marks another fuel convoy destroyed, this time by American fighter bombers. Piper closes his eyes. The wind howls through the broken windows of Stavelot. His men huddle together for warmth, surrounded by tanks that can no longer move. The Reich's once mighty war machine, engines of steel and pride, now stand like statues in the snow, powerless, silent. The Battle of the Bulge, meant to change the course of the war, is beginning to freeze to death. December 21, 1944, Alleglaise, Belgium. Snow falls thick and relentless, blanketing everything in white silence. The once roaring advance of Kampfgruppe Piper has ground to a halt. The tanks, King Tigers, Panthers, half-tracks, now stand motionless, engines dead, their barrels pointing toward nothing. Inside the church of L'Aglaise, the pews have been pushed aside. It's now a command post. Piper stands before a map pinned to the wall, its corners held by bayonets. Candlelight flickers over his face, gaunt and lined with exhaustion. Fuel reserves? He asks flatly. A quartermaster answers quietly. Less than 500 liters, Herr Standardinfer. Barely enough for one tank to move 5 kilometers. Piper exhales slowly, jaw tight. And ammunition? Half spent. The Americans are closing from the west. Air patrols circle during daylight. Outside, the muffled thump of artillery grows closer. The once clear roads are now choked with wrecked vehicles, German and American alike. Frozen corpses line the ditches, half buried under snow. Piper turns to his staff. We fight until we can't, then we destroy what's left. No tank, no document, no man falls alive into Allied hands. His adjutant hesitates. Herr Standardinfer. The men are freezing. Many haven't eaten in 2 days. Piper looks out through the church window, at the steel hulks glinting pale under moonlight. Then tell them to burn the fuel we can't use, he says. It'll keep them warm. The irony cuts deep. Fuel, the very thing that could have saved them, now becomes firewood. December 22, 1944, 0700 hours. At first light, Piper's sentries spot movement along the ridge. American tanks. The 117th Infantry Regiment is advancing. A single King Tiger, engine sputtering, lurches into position near the town square. Its cannon roars, one last defiant shot, and an American Sherman bursts into flames. But that's all the Tiger can manage before its fuel line runs dry for good. Machine gun bursts echo through the narrow streets. The Germans fire from windows, doorways, even from behind snowbanks. But the Americans keep coming, step by step, methodical, relentless. By noon, La Gleize is encircled. Piper knows it's over. His radio operator reports that all contact with HQ is lost. The Luftwaffe hasn't been seen for days. The promised reinforcements from 6th Panzer Army never arrived, stuck far behind, also out of fuel. The once grand Ardennes offensive, Hitler's last gamble, is collapsing from within. Piper gathers his officers. We will break out tonight, he says. On foot, quietly. Leave the vehicles, leave the wounded. Take only what you can carry. One officer protests. Leave the Tigers, sir. Those machines, Piper cuts him off sharply. They are monuments now. Nothing more. That night, as snow falls thicker, German soldiers move like shadows through the forest. Silent, cold, desperate. Behind them, explosions rumble as demolition teams destroy what remains. Fuel dumps, radios, documents, tanks. From the hills, American observers watch as flames rise from La Gleize, a burning graveyard of armor. December 24, 1944, Christmas Eve. When U.S. troops finally enter La Gleize, they find over 135 destroyed or abandoned German vehicles, including 30 King Tigers, the pride of the Waffen-SS. And in the center of town, near a burned-out truck, they find what the Germans fought so hard to seize: hundreds of barrels of captured American gasoline, untouched, frozen, useless. The Americans can't help but laugh at the absurdity. The Germans had captured more fuel than they could ever dream of, but it was the wrong kind. The Tiger II's Maybach HL230 engines ran on diesel, not high-octane gasoline. Even if they'd tried, using the American fuel would have destroyed the engines. The victory that might have powered the Reich's final offensive had turned into a cruel joke of fate. For Piper, the nightmare ends days later. After marching through miles of snow and enemy territory, he and 800 survivors, from an original 5,000 men, reached German lines. He reports to Sepp Dietrich, commander of the 6th SS Panzer Army. Dietrich asks simply, "Where are your tanks?" Piper answers, voice hollow, "In the snow." That moment captures more than the failure of one commander. It symbolizes the death of Germany's armored power. The Reich, once fueled by conquest and steel, was now running on nothing but desperation. When American engineers later study the wrecks of La Gleize, they're struck not just by the engineering brilliance of the Tiger tanks, but by the tragedy behind them: magnificent machines that couldn't move a mile without fuel. Meanwhile, the Allies are moving faster than ever. U.S. fuel convoys stretch for miles. Endless rivers of trucks. The Red Ball Express, pouring supplies toward the front, unstoppable. It's then that even the most hardened German officers begin to understand. They're not just losing the war on the battlefield. They've already lost the war of logistics. The captured barrels at La Gleize stand as a silent monument, to a moment when an empire realized its engines had gone still. December 26, 1944. Near Celles, Belgium. The snowstorm has finally broken. Beneath a pale winter sun, wreckage glitters like shattered glass, tanks burned black, half-tracks overturned, rifles frozen in ice. From above, American reconnaissance planes trace the full shape of Hitler's last great offensive. It's not a spearhead anymore. It's a graveyard. Along every road, fuel trucks sit abandoned, German and American alike, their contents drained, burned, or frozen solid. The once mighty 5th and 6th Panzer Armies, the pride of the Reich, are trapped in a white wasteland. The Battle of the Bulge, which began with such thunder and ambition, now lies broken under snow. Inside a half-collapsed farmhouse near Stoumont, Colonel Joachim Peiper sits hunched over a tin cup of black coffee. His uniform, once immaculate, is caked with soot and mud. His men, gaunt, frostbitten, silent, huddle near a dying fire. An aide hands him the last message received from SS headquarters. Hold your position. Counterattack in preparation. Reinforcements imminent. Peiper doesn't even look up. He knows it's a lie. There are no reinforcements, no fuel, no salvation. Outside, the air smells of diesel and ash. The horizon glows faintly where American artillery has been pounding the next village. Sternbeck, his adjutant, breaks the silence. Herr Standerton, for what now? Peiper looks at him, eyes hollow. Now? He pauses, letting the word hang in the cold air. Now we walk home. As they begin their retreat, the men pass through what was once their armored column. King Tigers lie half buried in snow, hatches frozen open. One still bears the emblem of the 1st SS Panzer Division, Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler. Some soldiers stop to touch the steel, not out of sentiment, but disbelief. They had once believed these machines were invincible. Now, they are tombstones. One soldier murmurs, "We were supposed to reach Antwerp by Christmas." Another replies quietly, "We didn't even reach dinner." Their laughter is short, bitter, swallowed by the wind. Meanwhile, across the lines, American Gs are raiding the abandoned towns. They find Peiper's former command post in La Glaise, a church still reeking of diesel and smoke. On the altar, beside a burned-out map, sits a metal canister marked U.S. Fuel Depot -80 octane. Private Frank Sullivan of the 30th Infantry Division leans over and shakes his head. "Guess they stole the wrong gas," he mutters. His buddy laughs, kicking an empty barrel. "Guess that's why they ain't moving." That small moment, a simple joke among freezing soldiers, sums up the entire disaster. The Germans had captured over 50,000 gallons of American fuel, but it couldn't save them. Their tanks drank diesel. The Americans burned gasoline. The difference between victory and collapse came down to a few molecules and a crumbling supply chain. By early January 1945, the snow is melting. The bulge on Allied maps has vanished. The Ardennes offensive is over. Peiper and the survivors of his Kampfgruppe, barely 800 men out of the original 5,000, reach German lines near Ligneuville. They are ghosts now, their faces hollow, their uniforms torn, their weapons rusted. A war correspondent later describes them as the army that froze while standing still. Peiper files his report. "We reached our limit not in courage, but in fuel." Historians would later call it the moment Germany realized it could no longer move its own war. The Luftwaffe was grounded. The tanks were immobilized. Even retreat required fuel, something the Reich no longer possessed. The Allied bombing campaign had done what no battlefield defeat could. It starved Germany's war machine from within. Every destroyed refinery, every rail yard, every synthetic fuel plant turned Hitler's dreams of a counteroffensive into a slow mechanical death. When American forces later collect what remains in the Ardennes, they find thousands of empty fuel drums. And one haunting truth: the Wehrmacht's greatest weapon had always been mobility. The Blitzkrieg. But in December 1944, the Blitz finally ran out of gas. Months later, as Berlin burned, that December moment in the snow still echoed. Not with the roar of engines or the clash of tanks, but with silence. The silence of engines that would never turn again. Peiper would survive the war, try for war crimes, and live long enough to remember what defeat truly sounded like. Not gunfire, not explosions, but the hum of tanks going quiet. In the end, the 50,000 gallons of American fuel captured in the Ardennes became more than just a logistical failure. It became a symbol, the moment the German war machine discovered that its real enemy wasn't the Allied soldier. It was the empty tank.